Greetings, everybody. This is Dexter Kendrick. I'd like to welcome you all back to Heavenly Body TV here on the Dexter Kendrick Soul channel on YouTube. Your place for relevant astrological advice, psychic phenomena, and all other relevant conversations for our lives here as the world turns. Please don't forget to like and subscribe to the Dexter Kendrick Soul channel. Follow me on Instagram at Dexter Kendrick Soul, and also follow me on Facebook at Dexter Kendrick Soul, so you can stay in the loop on updates, specials, etc., with regard to movements here in the universe and movements in your personal life. So today, our conversation is going to be on the new moon that was in Libra on Monday, October 12th. And my one question would be to just take a look into yourself for a second and ask yourself right now, how are you feeling regarding your relationships and other people? Relationships on a personal level and also relationships on a professional level. How are you feeling toward the people that you're coming into contact with this week? This has been a very dynamic new moon, and we're going to uncover what this new moon is, what the new moon means for all of us, how it's going to be showing up, and what it represents for this month. You only get one new moon a month, with certain exceptions. This month there's one new moon, and it means something. And so we're going to be discussing that right now. This new moon has been brought to you by the planets, the Sun, Pluto, Uranus, and Venus. So we're going to be touching on all of those different things. I'm going to be driving those points home in a very clear and plain manner. Don't worry, I will hold your hand through this process, and I'm going to keep it as short and brief as possible. So what does the new moon mean? Whenever we have a new moon, remember the moon is Earth's only satellite and does not give off its own light. And so whenever we're talking about the moon in astrology, in the horoscope, what we're talking about is what is the moon doing in relationship to the sun? If you'll go back to my conversation on Venus and Leo where we discussed the sun as the driving force in any horoscope, you will recall that everything revolves around the sun. And so we're always talking about how things are occurring in relationship to the sun. In our horoscope, the sun, at any given time of the year, especially the time of our birth or whenever we begin any project, where the sun is, will always indicate for us how we're going to be expressing ourselves, what we're going to be developing during any period of time that we cast a horoscope. And so right now, what is developing? Right now, the sun is currently traveling through the constellation of Libra, and as we discussed previously when we were talking about Mercury's retrograde in Libra, Libra represents how the sun is going to be expressing itself, and Libra is the sign of partnerships and marriage. It's also the sign that represents commitments that we make to ourselves, also commitments that we make to other people. Libra also represents how we interact with other people on a business and a personal level. What are our contractual agreements? What are the commitments that we made with other people? And where do it also represents how we confront other people with how we feel about ourselves, where we stand in relationship to where they stand. And so Libra also represents conflicts. Conflicts, a meeting of the minds, and also sometimes agreeing to disagree on certain ideas with regard to what is right and what is wrong. Libra is ruled by the planet Venus, and Venus represents our value structure. Certainly Venus represents love, charm, charisma, and beauty, and how we go about attempting to win our other people's favor so that we can get what we want from them. So certainly we can have a conflict with somebody, we can have a meeting of the minds and agreeing to disagree, we can have a confrontation with somebody, but if we do it in a manner where everybody feels like they're getting something, of course keeping in mind that we still want what we want, but making sure that another person feels like us getting what we want also gives them what they want, Venus has done her job. And that's the essence of Libra. So people who are born, happy birthday to all the Libras out there, people who are born during this season, Libra season, are learning about the art of compromise. What it means to give somebody a piece of what you want, and still to retain enough of what you want so that it makes sense and is worth your energy and time. And so that's why it falls under partnerships and marriage, because marriage is essentially a commitment, a agreement, and a contractual arrangement. So what is a new moon? Whenever we have a new moon, it means that the moon is being blocked out by the sun. We can't see the moon in the sky. You're beginning to see the moon now because it's a couple days later. I do these tapings on Fridays. But on Monday, when the new moon occurred on the 12th, you were not able to see the sun in the sky. And what that means is that the sun plants a seed. The sun represents our consciousness, how we're developing throughout the month. And so right now we are focused, all of us, on our partnerships. Where those partnerships are going to be focused on is something we'd have to look at our individual horoscope to identify. So like I always say, I highly recommend going to alabe.com and checking out what house in the horoscope Libra falls in for you. And you'll see what area a seed has been planted that is going to be developing until the full moon, at which there is a climax, a culmination, and a turning point in this cycle. That full moon actually is going to be occurring on October 27th in about 2 weeks' time. Every month that happens. The moon plants an emotional seed that we begin to work with. It's brand new, and it's taking up all of our conscious energy. Mind you, the sun is obliterating the moon, and the sun represents our consciousness. It's taking up a lot of our conscious energy to take a look at our partnerships in certain ways. And how are those ways described in the horoscope is indicated by the different planets that the moon is having an aspect with. This week, the moon is giving a hard angle aspect to the planet of Pluto, god of the underworld. I highly recommend, if you have not checked out my conversation on Pluto's current transit through Capricorn, that you pause this video, go take a look at my conversation on Pluto and Capricorn, and you'll get a true sense of what kind of energies and previously laid to rest demons that have lived inside us and are healing themselves have been resurfacing ever since Pluto went direct a few weeks ago. So I highly recommend going and checking that out because it'll give you a little bit more perspective. But right now that the sun is making a square, a 90-degree angle with Pluto in the sky, it means that our relationships are going to be giving us circumstances, and the people in those relationships are going to be providing us with some circumstance that is going to force us to either prove ourselves, step up to the plate and make some changes, or make necessary changes. And what that means is a 90-degree angle always represents friction. And so if you're feeling a little bit more irritable lately, and if your relationships might be showing up with some certain types of complications, you're going to be obliged at a certain point to have a conversation, because Libra represents confrontations with other people. You're going to be obliged to have a conversation with another person about it, but then you're going to be obliged, because it's not likely that their conversation is going to make any sense to you. It's not likely. The 90-degree aspect means irreconcilable differences. And so what it means is that the other person's viewpoint on what is taking place that is causing you some friction is may not make sense, but you're going to have to fall back on your own self. Remember, if you watch the video on Pluto's ascent from the underworld, he is only interested in killing off those aspects of yourself that you don't need any longer. So if there are certain relationships and aspects of relationships, not all relationships will end because of this cycle, but if there are certain aspects of relationships that you have not valued, or if there are aspects of yourself that have been undervalued, Pluto is going to tear away the veil, and you're going to see through your relationships with other people how you might be undervalued, and how you may also be undervaluing yourself. And so that irritation, that friction really comes because Pluto is a very self-oriented energy. If you think about volcanoes, they are holding on to tremendous power before they erupt. It's nobody else's power. When they erupt, it spills all over everybody, but it's their own power. And so we're obliged to take a look at this time at what is bubbling up within our relationships. What are we beginning to see? Some people, one client of mine told me that a lover from her past reached out to her after years. She said to me, I thought I banished him to the pit of hell, and all of a sudden he came out of nowhere after all these years and messaged me on Facebook. I swore I had removed him from my life. But Pluto brings back these energies so that we can see how much we've changed, to test whether we have healed completely, and then when, of course, we can tell those skeletons, no, you're not allowed to come out of the closet. We laid you to rest. You'll be staying down. How appropriate for this conversation, especially as we begin to celebrate Dia de los Muertos, the Day of the Dead, as well as Halloween or All Saints Day. So let's take a look at that. So we talked about how this new moon is giving our consciousness an awareness of where our relationships may be pressing us to make some certain personal changes that may not be the most comfortable. But the essence with regard to relationships that are showing up as complicated right now, any complications, is that you have to take a step out of what the other person's rationale is and ask yourself, how do I feel? How do I feel? Do I feel good in this arrangement? Or do I feel not so good in this arrangement? Because regardless of the story the other party might be giving you, you are being obliged to make some change that matters to you. Because at the end of the day, you have to live with yourself, and you have to be able to go to sleep at night. And so while Pluto does tear away any niceties, any overtly facades, which is why it's squaring Libra. Libra is all about social grace, about everybody getting something that seems fair. And Pluto is not about fairness, because nobody is ready essentially to die, especially people who are healthy, right? If you want something really badly, you don't want to let it go. Pluto represents when it's time to let it go, even if you're not ready. And that's why sometimes we experience our own rage when loved ones and things that we wanted really badly are ripped from our hands, or are just so near, we just almost, if this person could just say the one thing we really want to hear, or if they could just see our way of relating and come over to our side. This square says irreconcilable differences. It's not meant to happen. So we have to take a look at what is not meant to happen, and where we're attempting to force something, and we're beginning to participate in our own rage, in the formation of our own rage, and acknowledge that something is going to have to die. What is going to have to die is our release of our non-acknowledgement of self. We're going to have to take a look at where we may not be feeling the most comfortable in our arrangement and say, you know what? Okay. I don't feel good in this arrangement. Goodbye. I'm okay with whatever's coming next. I don't even know what it will be, but I have to say goodbye. And so that's the essence of the square to Pluto. Now, mind you, the sun is also making a dynamic aspect to Uranus. I talked about Uranus a little bit when I spoke about him as being the father of all the gods, the sky god. I highly recommend you go take a look at my video on Saturn's current transit through Sagittarius, because we talk about how Uranus fell from grace, but how essentially he was in power. And so what happened in the story of Uranus is that he had many children with his wife, the earth goddess Gaia. And because he was the sky god, he represents ideas, the ideal, the perfect situation. And currently Uranus is transiting through the sign or constellation of Aries. And so we're going to be taking a look at how he is expressing himself. But in mythology, Uranus gave birth to children through Gaia. And he gave birth to a number of children that he had in his mind were ugly, such as the Cyclopses. We've all heard of the Cyclopses, the one-eyed monsters. And so he banished them to hell, which later, of course, his other son Pluto became the ruler of. But he just wanted to do away with them because they weren't perfect. He had an idea of what was perfect, and they were not it. And then, of course, he got that omen that his other sons would eventually overthrow him, and he tried to swallow that conversation. But we'll get to that in a second. But nonetheless, he swallowed all of his children and tried to cut off his lineage because it wasn't showing up the way he wanted it to. So we're going to have to look at this new moon phase from the 12th of October until the 27th, where, because Aries, Uranus is going to be expressing itself through Aries, where, because planets always represent what is happening, where am I looking at my relationships to fit into my perfect ideal? Where have I built a box? Where have I created a box and tried to fit my relationships, business and personal, into a box? And where are other people's rebellion against this box, whatever it might be, that I think will work for me? Where is their rebellion showing me that I actually might need to shift a little? I might need to shift my values a little bit, because everybody is entitled to their identity. And so Aries, the sun in Libra, opposing Uranus in Aries, is going to be forcing us to answer those questions. People are not going to just fall in line to our vision of what would be a perfect relationship or scenario just because we feel strongly about it, Pluto. So Uranus represents in the chart, wherever he shows up, he represents sudden change and disruption. But he also represents insight. Remember, as the God of the sky, it's all about ideas. So we're going to have to shift our ideals, and usually it comes after some form of breakdown or disruption. We are going to have to let go of something and allow a brand new conversation to enter into the arena. If you're dating somebody and it's showing up not working, and you perhaps had certain rules and regulations around dating, you might have to shift your rules and regulations around dating, because otherwise you're going to be empty-handed. People at this time are not going to fit into your box. You're going to have to expand your conversation so that you can fit in more experiences that are appropriate for where you are now. Pluto's only interested in killing off what is already dead and dying. So you don't have to fear about everything falling apart in your life, just those things that are time to go, just those things that it's time to leave. Now, on a more positive note, we did talk about, I'll reiterate, how the sun, the new moon, is planting a seed where we're focusing on our relationships and how they're working for us and how they may not be working for us, how we have to take a step back out of our relationships if they are showing up as complicated and fall back on our own rationale. And if it doesn't make sense, because Pluto represents all those things that go on beneath the surface. And so the underworld, or hell, right, where we usually visit when we are not getting what we want and we experience our own rage, it's very complicated. It's very hard to put those emotions into words. But you can ask yourself one question, and that is, how am I feeling? Am I feeling good in this scenario, or am I feeling bad? If I am feeling bad in the scenario I find myself in, personal or professional, in my relationships, then it's time to let it go. It's time to sever ties. It might not be comfortable, but it's time to begin to sever ties, however that may show up for you. I'm not advocating just cutting people off unless that's your way. Myself, as what some would call a metal constitution, when I realize something is done, I'm done. Nonetheless, so moving forward, Venus, the ruler of Libra, is representing how, while, yes, we might have to do all these different things, Venus is currently transiting through Virgo. Virgo is the sign of making it work. Virgo is the sign of recognizing when something's not working and trying to fix it. Virgo is the sign representing how we begin to improve ourselves. So because currently the other planet, Jupiter, planet of luck, is transiting through Virgo as well, we're going to have a extreme optimism after we overcome the hurdle that Pluto throws our way. We're going to have extreme optimism about why it matters. It matters to begin to throw off things that are weighing you down. It matters to begin to let go of things that you're struggling with unnecessarily, because some new things are trying to give birth. And when does that birth come? At the full moon on October 27th in Taurus. We'll be covering that in 2 weeks' time. But I just wanted to come through tonight and say, take a look at your relationships. How are you feeling right now? You feeling a little rough around the edges? If you are, good. It's appropriate to begin to clean house, to make space for the brand new, to begin to acknowledge that this space that you're making for the brand new is opening you up to greater possibilities, not just in your personal life, not just in your business life, but opening your mind to some dreams and aspirations that now can begin to take form, because you're beginning to create space. We cannot create space, we cannot give birth to brand new ideas, projects, and situations if other things that are already just junk are in our lives and taking space. And sometimes it's not just things, sometimes it's people. I highly recommend you go back and visit my conversation on Pluto. Highly recommend you go back and visit my conversation on Saturn and its transit through Sagittarius. Once again, don't forget to like and subscribe to the Dexter Kendrick Soul channel. I promise you this storm won't last. Please follow me on Facebook, Dexter Kendrick Soul, or follow me on Instagram, Dexter Kendrick Soul. I will see you in a week's time. Be blessed. Thank you.